Welcome to the most important week of the year for the podcast industry. Welcome to Podcast Movement 2025.
Hello, everybody. Oh, no one's wearing headphones. What am I supposed to do about this? Hi. Good morning. Good morning. All right, I'll wait to it. I'm Alan Black. I am the founder of Left of Dial Media. We are a newly formed audio company. Our goal is to make, distribute, and above all, champion great, remarkable audio. Like probably everyone in this room and in this very big hotel, I love podcasts and I love audio. I got a lot of time for chatcasts and things that I listen to while I'm at the gym or cooking. But I really love great audio storytelling, the kind of thing that sticks with you, like that you're talking about 10 years later, the kind of thing that you get excited about when there's a new episode, the kind of thing that you immediately need to text your friends about. I spent 20 years working in documentary film, and then I heard The Moth, and it was a game changer for me. I decided that's what I wanted to do. I quickly became obsessed with a whole bunch of podcasts. Podcasts like Mogul, Invisibilia, Another Round, WTF, Startup, Reply All, Richard's Famous Food Podcast, Everything is Alive Nancy, Ear Hustle, Missing Richard Simmons. Way too many to name. 10 years later, I work in audio and people ask me all the time, where should I start? What should I listen to? What will get me into podcasts? I mention any of the things on this list and people stare at me with a blank face. They don't know any of these shows. Yesterday, anecdotally, I was in line registering and I was going on effusively about Ear Hustle. Have you all heard Ear Hustle? That's crazy. It won the Pulitzer and is one of the greatest podcasts of all time. And in a room full of audio people don't know it. I think that's a problem. We have a problem in podcasting, writing our history and preserving the legacy of the great, essential works of audio. We have an algorithm that favors the new and the unremarkable and things that are big and bold, but does not favor things that are enduring. Left of Dial got together with a bunch of great sponsors like Amazon Music and Shure and supporting cast, as well as like a dozen great partners, and we created the Essential Listening Poll. In April, we asked podcasters, hosts, industry folks, academics, journalists to help us create the list of the greatest podcasts of all time. The goal was to get new audiences into these things that really inspired a lot of audio makers to preserve our history and to really make sure that the great works are elevated. We are this morning launching the 100 greatest podcasts of all time. They'll be online, but right now I wanted to unveil the top 20 for audio lovers and the people in this room. So here goes.
I have periodically been asked what I saw, if the genes of the future ever came to be. These are people you not fall without meetings. Looks like today at 11 I have an appointment with myself to drastically change the course of my entire life to come and to force a fatherless human being in existence. You are already immersed. You are in the deep water. Swimming.
So this case boiled down to two things: a book and a person who was soon carrying the book. The person was one of the most notoriously unreachable celebrities on the planet.
The real government leader was trapped in his home with soldiers outside aiming straps at his dome posted all around.
This is Jake Berman. He used to live in LA, so he understands the struggle all too well. But as Jake discovered, it didn't have to be this way.
Let's tell another spunky Halloween story.
Did you kidnap, sexually assault, and murder Jacob Wetterling?
For this episode, I talked to Sabrina and Jack Antonoff about everything that went into making Please.
Did I get what I was looking for? I didn't know what I was looking for, but I got life change.
And then came this thought that's gotten a lot of people into a lot of trouble. The thought, well, I could do that.
I'll be talking to the President of the United States.
In my garage. It was crazy. The photo first showed up on the internet in 2006 on a message board for music nerds called the Airlines. Somebody stumbled across it randomly, and they posted it just because they thought it was really funny. The airline tickets were purchased, the hotel was booked, but a couple days before we were set to leave for LA, I got nervous.
The mayor of Centerville started campaigning for re-election. Some brothers went off to space camp together. A guy hired hitman to unsuccessfully try and kill the West Blockton police case. And Gene Ingram served chicken salad for lunch one day. Benny and Joe Russell.
This is a story about dreams, about aspiring to have a better life. Now, in this case, those aspirations meet in this really difficult transcendent.
For a lot of this all started a couple of weeks inside the White House press retreat.
This was not the reaction I expected. I felt like I just interviewed an ivory-billed woodpecker. But when I told Adnan what Asia remembering, instead of being excited, Adnan said it was heartbreaking.
From WBEZ Chicago, This American Life, Myra Glass, stay with us.
All right. I encourage you to check out the list, explore, find something new, listen to something new, and above all, tell people about what you listen to and share the great shows that you love. We don't have a lot of time. These are very short sessions. For the rest of the session, I wanted to have a conversation about what makes things essential, how you create things that endure, really capture people's imaginations and kind of live on for a long time. And I've got an amazing panel of people to do that.
Your transition to a chair, but you're...
So I'll be quick. I've got Rebecca Lavoie. She runs the podcast unit in PR, where she helped create a whole bunch of hits, including Bear Brook, which is number 56 on our list. Andy Bowers. You've got a big, long bio. I'm just going to say that a lot of shows, a lot of things, big, long career. Was responsible for Political Gabfest and Revisionist History, both on our list. And then Jack Davenport is the co-founder of Goal Hanger, the biggest independent podcast producer outside of the U.S. Has had a lot of success the past few years. The Rest is History is number 68 on our list. Firstly, congrats. You've made things that the industry thinks highly of, and really it speaks to their place in podcasting history. I'm going to start with a question for everybody. Can you tell me about the podcasts or the podcasts that inspired you to make audio, and specifically the podcast that inspired the work that is on this list?
Yeah, so I work at a public radio station by day, and I have a podcast criticism show and the rest of my life. And so I listen to a lot of shows, and convincing Jason Moon, the reporter, to make this a podcast was a piece of work in itself. He's very earnest. He didn't think he was a true crime person. And then I pointed him to In the Dark, and I pointed him to Missing and Murdered with Connie Walker. And I made him watch The Jinx, which I also watched. And I'm like, you can do investigative work. You can put together a narrative that keeps people hooked in, and you can completely have the ability to look in the mirror and have integrity as a reporter and do this and be in the true crime category all at the same time.
Andy?
Well, I started pretty early on, 2005, in the what we call the spaghetti at the walls kind of podcasting approach. Political Gabfest, which I'm very pleased is on the list, turns 20 years old this year. So we were just, meeting in conference rooms at slate.com and just trying things that worked. And I can tell the story of how we put that together. But we had no idea what worked in podcasting. Revisionist History, by turns, started after Serial. So we knew that a long form, really in-depth, highly produced, great story, limited edition show could work. And so it was two different environments where I started those.
Yeah, as for me, my background was in talk radio in the UK for the BBC, and I was always a huge listener to podcasts. I mean, something that was incredibly influential to me that I still love to this day, Dan Carlin, Hardcore Histories, just, absolutely absorbing, perfect for a plane flight, as I've just done 10 hours over from London. So that was a big influence. Revolutions as well, Mike Duncan. Revisionist history, I mean, I remember listening to that sort of in 2018, 2019, in the sort of earlier days, and I mean the quality of what was being put out. That was the point where I left broadcasting and radio to concentrate fully on podcasting because of shows like Revisionist History, because I could see what was happening over in the US, and I wanted to try and replicate some of that in the UK.
Thanks. So when you develop something new, when you're developing a new show, how much, if at all, do you think about like the long legs of the thing? Like, are you creating something that's temporal or something that will, endure? And how do you make something that is unique and you imagine will stand out from the pack of, millions of new shows that are coming out? Sorry on this. Yeah.
This is really relevant for how we first developed The Rest is History. So we'd actually launched a history podcast before The Rest is History, focusing just on the Second World War. It's called We Have Ways of Making You Talk. It's kind of a slightly comic look of at the Second World War with a leading academic in the UK and one of our most prominent comedians as well, who's also a complete anorak on the subject. And what we found with that show is that it was much more shaggy dog in its style. It wasn't very focused. It was very chatty. It didn't really have too much structure within it. And even as myself, as a fan of history, I was interested in it for 20, 25, maybe 30 episodes, not kind of 100 episodes as it was in 2019, or 900 episodes as it is now. And I thought that one of the difficulties we had was that we found a really loyal audience for the show, but the barriers to entry for new listeners at that point, once you're 20, 30 episodes in and the structure's not completely defined, it was essentially impossible for people to sort of penetrate it and for it to continue to grow. So we sort of took these learnings and we tried to develop something specifically. The main things that we were trying to do with The Rest is History were we wanted to create something that each episode was a standalone story. So if people came to the show and discovered it 2 years down the line, they could pick and choose the subject matter that they were interested in. So you could listen to our Watergate episodes if you're interested in American history, or Henry VIII episodes, or Julius Caesar, you could pick and choose. So that was a big factor at the start. And the other point was that I'd seen a couple of shows, especially in the sort of radio era, go too far down the kind of in-joke, really making it quite difficult for new audiences to understand and get on board with. And so we were quite aware of that at the start, that we always wanted it to be accessible for new listeners no matter when they discovered it. And so that, I think that's been it was central to the way we developed it, and it's proved out in the last couple of years.
Sure.
With the political gabfest in 2005, we weren't even sure if there would be an episode next week. That was a big win for us when that happened. But the idea behind it was, I worked with all these amazing people at Slate who I would see on TV and radio shows, and they would be, kind of sedate, like you're supposed to be on these shows. But then around the office, they were hilarious and honest. And coming from radio, I said, okay, let's do the non-radio version of this. Let's do the version that you would do at the bar after you appear on Washington Week in Review, the honest one, because there's no rules, there's no FCC for this. You can say whatever you want. And I found 3 people who were willing to do that. And just one quick story about, for me, the hard part of learning the difference between radio and podcasting in those early days. One time we were taping, and David Plotz, who was hosting, got a call from his wife on his cell phone. And he said, sorry, I got to take this. No, honey, I'm doing the podcast. I'll call you later. Hung up, and I thought, as a radio producer, okay, I'll cut that out in post. And then I got there, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to cut it out. That was a sweet moment. And I left it in, and we heard from so many listeners saying, I love that. I've never heard that before. What a great thing. And I thought, this is a different medium. and we can do different things. And 20 years later, I guess we were right.
We think a lot about the time capsule component of our narrative shows at NHPR. You know, when we were making the 13th Step in that reporting, the reporter and our news director's houses got attacked by some thugs that the subject of the podcast hired to intimidate them, to keep them from telling the story. And it was a difficult conversation at NHPR about, like, do we include that? How much of the reporter's stuff do we put in? And, you know, it wasn't just me, but my point was, this is the story, because that the theme of people in power trying to silence you is a forever theme. With Bear Brook, it was about a science case, a cold case, and developing technology, genetic genealogy at the time, which was brand new. And this was the first case where it had ever been used. So we had this conversation. Yes, we can use the language. This will change the way crimes are solved forever. And that in that way, it'll also be an origin story for in 10 years when everybody knows about this. Where did it start? Like, we have that. So that's something that we think about a lot.
Thanks. That's it's fun hearing the origin stories of these shows that are, you know, people are still talking about now. How do you think about, like, the sonic properties of a show in terms of having them be distinct? Like, I'm thinking, you know, theme song and music and scoring and credits and Easter eggs and things that are, like, very distinct to the audio medium.
Yeah, we think about definitely a cinematic component of NHPR shows. I think that's what makes them stand out. We're also very lucky. I mean, I work at a station where people have worked there forever, and we let them, we think it's really important for them to bring their other talents to work. So Jason Moon, who reported Bear Brook, who reported the Youth Development Center, who co-reported 13th Step, he actually makes and scores the podcast. He makes the music and scores the podcast, which is a very unusual situation. That being said, I think that if your storyteller is invested in the sonic product, and it's not just about how do I read this, how do I sound on mic, but it's about the experience the audience is going to have at the very end, I think that's actually critical, and that's something that we really wrap into all of our production.
I'll talk about revisionist history. The formula for creating that show is very simple. Any of you can do it. Find a mega best-selling author who's been around for decades, who everyone loves, and convince him for a year to come and do a podcast, and then have him come in with 5 scripts saying, I thought about it, here are the scripts, and have them all be perfect. So that's all you have to do. But the one thing that really struck me about Malcolm is he loved the idea of using audio clips instead of quotes as he would in a book. And he really took to that once we taught him how to use a microphone and everything. And one remark he made to me at one point was, you know what I can do in audio that I can't really do in a book is I can make people cry. And I think that was the production element that kind of pushed that show over the top.
Yeah, I think the thing that we concentrate most from an audio perspective is the tone of the show, the tone of the relationship between the hosts, how their relationship comes across, and how they invite the audience into it. Our shows, are in terms of, if you had a spectrum of audio production with, revisionist history and Bear Brook at one end, rest is history is probably somewhere at the other end. Much more chat format. Most of the show is the two guys talking to each other, but the way they interact and the way they make that conversation accessible to the audience, essentially our entire focus and effort in production, particularly when you're developing new shows, go into establishing that tone and that warmth that is unique to audio, that invites people into it, and that ultimately makes them want to come back 2 times a week and spend loads of time with you.
Yeah, I kind of follow, because I assume that a lot of people here make that or aspire to be the rest is history. How intuitive is that relationship between the hosts, or how much thought and effort goes into that, week after week?
It's more at the start. Obviously now they've been doing it for so long and they're so good at it that they've got into a really good rhythm. But I mean, in the case of the rest is history, if you go back and listen to the first 50, even 100 episodes now, it's a very different product to where we are now. And I guess the show evolves over time. All shows that you're putting that much content out, 2-3 hours a week every week for the last 5 years, that relationship is going to evolve. The difficult question for us now as a business is that how do we, with The Rest is History, we had the luxury that no one was listening for the first 100 episodes, so we could kind of figure it out as we went along. Whereas when we launch a new show now, there's a lot more noise around it. There's a lot more publicity. So we have to spend a lot more time in that piloting phase trying to get that tone and that relationship right, even with the knowledge that as much as we do beforehand in terms of pre-production, if the show works and it continues for multiple years, it is going to evolve, and we have to allow it to respond to what the audience responds to and allow it to have that room for evolution.
So
I can add just one thing about host chemistry, which was when we started the Political Gabfest, it was actually a rotating group of Slate personnel who would come through every week. And we weren't trying to settle necessarily on one group. But then one day, the three hosts who are there still to this day, Emily Bazelon, David Plotz, and John Dickerson, they came in, they were just up that week. And at the end of that episode, we all said, there was something there. Something about that trio, the way you teased each other, the way you played off each other, that worked. And it just kind of clicked for all of us. And that has lasted for 20 years. So that sort of dynamic is not something you can really plan in advance. I recommend trying in pilots different groupings if you're going to do a chat show to make sure you find people who click together.
Political Gabfest is kind of like The Simpsons. Like it's been on forever. I always think about The Simpsons, how it started. Yeah, the first episode looks nothing and feels nothing like season 2 and season 3, and there's like guess and test in the first bits. We short on time, and this clock is scaring me. I want to go broader, and just want to talk at the state of the industry, like which seems to obviously people need audiences, and I feel like the audience we're kind of rewarding sameness, and I wonder if you think today there remain opportunities to like try new things and innovate and do something that's not like, oh, this works, we're going to do that, but to like make something new, create your own, like a new category almost.
I think so. I think that, the lower your stakes are, the more chances you should take. And this is why I've been arguing very strenuously for many years that public radio stations in particular, we kind of know that NPR, they've kind of let the ship sail a little bit on their creative narrative work, but stations are already making journalism that they know they may not be able to pay for. So why not make the very best journalism that you might not be able to pay for, but also has the potential to pay for itself? I mean, Bear Brook started in 2018. There's 3 very short seasons out. And that show, because of its tail, is still paying. It's paying the station every month with us doing very little in the feed, except maybe promoting other stuff once in a while. And each season has taken like 3 years to make. So if you really invest in making the journalism as good as it can possibly be, making the production as good as it can possibly be, and you are not answering to a corporate guy who's like, it has to be out next month, that's when you should take the chance. That's when you should take risk, and that's when you should go deeper and harder and just think about the foreverness of it.
I think that's an excellent point, and you made it too, Jack, that starting without a huge audience is a blessing, not a curse. That's certainly how we started at Slate. We could try things. We didn't have the pressure. If you are mandated to come up with a hit right out of the gate, well, that's a surefire recipe for not coming up with a hit, because there's too much pressure. You're just trying to squeeze everything in there. So I do like the kind of skunk works approach of doing something a little quietly, trying things. I also love, doing good journalism in a podcast. But I would recommend that you play around. If you have an idea for a new form or something that is, audio can still work. It doesn't all have to be video now. And there may be new opportunities in audio because of what's happening in video, that things you can only do in audio. This is some of the stuff I'm working on now, is interactive audio, which is much harder to do in video. And so I think experiment, play around, do it in a low-stakes environment, and No guarantee, but there's a chance you can grow an audience for it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Andy, because there's a big difference with how this works in audio versus video, or whatever we're calling the kind of video evolution of what shows are becoming, and certainly what our shows are becoming now. Because when we started, our challenge was competing with people in the UK like the BBC or the Guardian, these big, legacy media organisations with huge own distribution. So the challenge for, familiar to all indie podcasters is, how do you get people to give your show a go? How do you get them to give it a chance to listen to it for the first time and potentially get hooked and tell more people about it? So on one hand, I still think that is difficult in audio, but the innovation that you see coming from YouTube and from through sort of social first brands now, it is possible to, through the quality of your content, grow an audience. It means that you have to be able to take the right signals that the platforms are sending you in terms of what content is resonating. It means that you do probably need to be thinking about video when you're coming up with the shows, which makes making the more documentary style stuff very, very difficult. Like that's there's a way to translate that to video, and it's basically a full Netflix documentary. Like that's really expensive. But for the kind of shows that we make, the personality chat format shows, I think there is real more than ever, it's possible to grow an audience just through the quality of your content on these on YouTube and on social platforms. So I think it's a really interesting thing for the industry to tackle, because we absolutely still want shows that are the kind of shows that these guys make, your higher end production shows. And I think that the public broadcasting, again in the UK, I think has a big part to play in this, because there's no need for them to chase the more commercial end of the business, which is two people chatting to each other and stuffing it full of ads. They cannot take more risks, and maybe that should be their purpose. I think
I'm all for risks. I think it's time for like the Ramones and Nirvana, people to make things in their basement with no thought of audience, just wanting to make great things. But viability, I don't know. I think we're going to run out of time, so I was going to go to the audience, but I don't think we've got time. I'm going to ask you a question. It'll either be the easiest to answer or the hardest. I assume a lot of people are making things here. Give them one show that you think will get them inspired and activated and really excited about the possibilities of audio.
I would say You Didn't See Nothing. It's a podcast that came out a couple of years ago. It combines basically prose with storytelling and journalism, and it basically took a personal story and turned it into a universal story in a way that is exceptional to listen to as an experience.
The New York Times doesn't need any help from me, but of all their shows that they do, I'd say the one I like the most is Hard Fork, which I think is on the list.
It's on the list.
Yeah. Which is a tech show with these two guys. It sounds unlike any other New York Times podcast. It's two guys who know everything about tech, but make it feel like you're sitting at the table with them talking about it. And I learn more from that show than I do from almost any other chat show I listen to.
I'm going to give a very boring commercial answer to this. I think I'm sure a lot of people have heard Acquired, which I often think of as sort of the rest is history for businesses, which I absolutely love and I think is in the list. Listen to the way they do commercial integrations. Listen to the way they do ad reads. Like, they are at the absolute forefront of understanding their audience completely, understanding their advertisers, and making that link up. If you want to make money from podcasting and you want to understand the absolute, top end of what is possible, when you understand your audience, what they need, and then you're able to pitch that into advertisers, listen to Acquired. That's not maybe very inspiring on the creative front, but it might help you make some money.
I love it. 3 very different perspectives. I think check those out. I appreciate the 3 of you doing this. I wish we had more time to reflect on your work and work generally. I thank you for making things that stick. That's a hard thing to do. Thank you all for coming. I hope your things live on and are around 10, 20, 30 years from now for me to listen to. I got 14 seconds. What should I do? Nothing? Okay. All right. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks. Thank you.